All right, guys, so welcome to the defining moment in French 7 class. This is it, okay? This is probably the most important thing you're going to learn this year, conjugating French ER verbs. So, you all should have gotten a copy, a hard copy, paper copy, in a drop-off. And there's a reason for that. So regardless of whether you've been doing the work via Google Classroom or in paper form, I thought that you should all be filling out this packet of guided notes so that you have access to it, like a tangible thing to help you complete this week's assignments. So, I would like for you to have your packet in hand and a pen or pencil and to fill it out as I go. Trust me, it's going to be a lot easier to have something in your hand where you can flip back and forth than having to pull up, uh, a PowerPoint and then flip back and forth between two assignments. You can still complete the assignments online if you want to. That's no problem. I just would like for you to fill out this packet by hand. From experience, I find that this works a lot better. So let's go. We're conjugating ER verbs. Okay, so there are three things you need to conjugate a verb, and we talked about some of them already. The first thing you need in order to conjugate a verb is your subject, right? Tell me, who is doing the action? Is it I, you, he, she, we, you guys, they, Eric, Natalie? Eric and Natalie. Okay, that's our subjects. Whether it's a noun, a name, or a subject pronoun, that's your subject. Then, of course, you need a verb. What action is being done? Okay, so that's going to be our manger, danser, chanter, écouter, étudier, travailler, habiter, visiter, inviter, whatever. Any of those ER verbs that we just looked at in the vocab. That's what we're going to use. And then we need a tense, okay? And that's something that you guys don't have to worry so much about now because for most of 7th and 8th grade, we are going to only conjugate in the present tense. So things that are taking place in the moment right now. Now, but that being said, as we keep going further, there is the past tense, and there's a couple past tenses, and there's the future tense, conditional tense. So we need to know, you know, when the action took place. But for now, the tense is the present. Okay. We have looked at our subject pronouns when we learned how to conjugate the verb to be, être. All right. So, and you had been exposed to our singular subject pronouns at that point. Since then, you've been exposed to our plural subject pronouns, but let's review them. So what is the pronoun for I? Je. Subject pronoun for you, singular, tu. Subject pronoun for he, il. Subject pronoun for she, elle. And I'm sorry, these are not all lining up perfectly with the conversion from a PowerPoint to Google Slides. The subject pronoun for we, nous. The subject pronoun for you, plural, vous. And then we have a they masculine and a they feminine, right? Because everything in French has a gender. So the masculine plural subject pronoun for they is il, and for feminine, it is elle. So basically, you are just adding an S to our singular subject pronouns for he and she. Notice how I did not pronounce the S. Okay, so je, tu, il, elle, nous, vous, il, elle. And it's very important to know what these mean. And I believe I mentioned in one of the previous videos, right? A lot of people mix you guys and they. So just make sure you pay some attention to that. All right. So Now that we've looked at our subject pronouns, which is the first kind of like recipe ingredient to conjugating a verb, we are going to go into the rules of conjugating ER verbs. So, when we conjugate verbs, we always are going to talk about dropping the ER ending, okay? And that's because that's what the group of verb is called. It's the ER group of verb. When we learn how to conjugate IR verbs, we're going to drop the IR. When we learn how to conjugate RE verbs, you're gonna hear me say drop the RE. Okay, the reason is that it's the group of verb, it's the infinitive ending, and when we conjugate it with a subject, that ER goes away and gets replaced with a different ending based on the subject pronoun. So I know I'll just sound like Chinese right now, but I'm about to give you a visual. So when conjugating regular ER verbs, the ending will be the same for each subject pronoun. So the good news is, technically, you have 6 different subject pronouns. You have je, tu, il, elle, although they have different meanings, they're kind of like in the same category. So this counts as a third category. Nous, vous, and again, il, elle, plural, although they have different meanings, they kind of fall in the same category. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in order to conjugate ER verbs, you have to learn 3 different rules. No, I'm sorry, not 3, 6 different rules. All right, so it's 1 rule per subject pronoun, and once you've gotten this down, then you can pretty much conjugate any ER verb, which is pretty cool. All right, so let me show you what I'm talking about here. So when we conjugate an ER verb with je, okay, you're going to drop the ER and replace it with E. Okay, and I know this is like every year. Students will say, well, why can't we just say we're dropping the R? And yes, technically, okay, but it's not, but it's visually, yes, that's what happens. But we really need to drop the ER and then replace it with an E. And I just want you to get used to that, to dropping that infinitive ending. We're working with ER verbs, so therefore we're dropping the ER. Because as we get into further, more complicated grammatical concepts, it's important to just have that in the back of our mind that we're dropping the ER ending. So I have the verb manger, to eat, and I want to conjugate it with je. So right now it's reading I to eat. Well, we don't want to do that. Okay, I want to say I eat or I'm eating. So what do? Well, I'm going to drop that ER and replace it with E. And it sounds like je mange. Je mange. All right, so again, and this means I eat or I'm eating. So our French present tense has 2 different meanings depending on the context. All right, so it could mean I eat or I'm eating. All right, here we have the verb call or to phone, téléphoner, and I want to conjugate it with je. What do? Well, right now it reads as je téléphoner, I to call or I to phone. That does not make sense. So we need to change that. Okay, so what do? We drop the ER, replace it with E. Je téléphone, I call or I'm calling. So as you're filling out your packet, you might want to put the meaning right here, like I eat slash I'm eating. I call slash I'm calling. Okay. All right, we have chanter, to sing, I to sing. Well, that does not make sense. We need to conjugate that verb. So what do? I drop my ER and replace it with E. Je chante. I sing or I'm singing. Okay, so from now on, whenever you are conjugating a verb that ends with ER, and you want to conjugate with je, you're going to drop that ER and replace it with E. Is it like that for all ER verbs? No, because French is a quirky language and it's got all these exceptions. But I think I can think of only one verb that doesn't follow that rule. And we're going to learn it later next year. So for the most part, I would say like 99% of the time, when you conjugate an ER verb with je, Drop the ER, replace it with E. Okay, let's learn the rule for to. When you conjugate a regular ER verb with to, you drop the ER and you're going to replace it with ES. All right, so you to dance, danser. You to dance. Okay, that does not make sense. So now we have to conjugate it. So what do? I drop the ER and replace it with ES. And it sounds like this. Tu danses. Okay, so even though we put these letters there, they're silent. You to swim. I want to conjugate tu with nager. Well, right now it's in the infinitive form because it ends in ER and it means that we haven't done the proper conjugation, but we're about to. What do I do when I conjugate an ER verb with tu? Drop the ER, replace it with ES. Tu nages. You swim or you are swimming. Jouer. Okay, the verb to play. You to play. We want to conjugate it. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to drop that ER and replace it with ES. Tu joues. You play or you are playing. All right, so far, let's review. When you conjugate a regular ER verb with je, drop the ER, replace it with E. When you conjugate an ER verb with tu, you drop the ER, replace it with ES. Okay? Our next subject pronouns, il or elle singular. All right, so again, yes, they mean different things, but they're kind of like they fall in the same category, he or she. Okay, so when conjugating an ER verb with il or elle singular, you're going to drop the ER and replace it with E. All right, so same thing as with je. Okay, so regarder, to watch. We want to say he watches or he is watching. So what are we going to do? Well, we got to get rid of the ER. We're going to drop the ER and replace it with I. Il regarde. So again, it's silent. Écouter, to listen, with she. She to listen? Nah, we're going to conjugate that. We're going to drop that ER and replace it with I. Elle écoute. She listens or she is listening. Dîner, to have dinner or to eat out with il. What do? Drop the ER, replace it with I. Il dîne. He is eating dinner or he eats dinner. All right, so we are 3 rules down. When you conjugate an ER verb with je, you drop the ER, replace it with I. When you conjugate an ER verb with tu, you drop the ER, replace it with ES. When you conjugate an ER verb with il or elle singular, you drop the ER, replace it with E. Okay, so far we've done our singular subject pronouns. And remember, right, with il or elle, you could be replacing them with a noun or a name. Okay, so here it could be Luc, it could be Marie, or it could be le chien, right? So we can replace these subject pronouns. We need to know the equivalent so that we know the rule, but these could be nouns or names. All right, so moving on to our plural subject pronouns. When we conjugate a regular ER verb with nous, we drop the ER and we replace it with ONS. All right, so nous and travailler, we to work. Well, we need to conjugate that. So what are we going to do? Drop the ER, replace it with ONS, and it sounds like this. Nous travaillons. So the only silent letter here is the S. The ON letter combination makes the on sound. All right. Étudier. We want to say we are studying or we study. Drop the ER, replace it with ONS. Nous étudions. Okay, we're studying. So, nous étudions. You're hearing me do the liaison here, right? Where I attach the sound of the S to the E accent aigu. Nous étudions. All right. There is a little exception here when it comes to the subject pronoun nous and verbs that end in GER. Okay, so such as voyager, manger, nager. So we are still going to drop that ER, but we're going to add EONS instead of just the ONS. And the reason for that is if we were to leave out that E, it would sound like this. Nous voyagons or nous mangons, nous nagons. And that's not how we say these in the infinitive. We say nous voyageons, nous mangeons. So we need that soft j sound, and that's what the E is there for. Okay. So whenever you are working with a GER verb, you're going to have to remember that if you conjugate it with nous, you drop the ER, but you replace it with EONS. All right, so that's the exception. All right, moving on to conjugating verbs, ER verbs with vous. You drop the ER and replace it with, you actually know this one because we learned an expression when we were learning the foods. Vous désirez. Remember those last two letters on désirez? Yeah, drop the ER, replace it with EZ. All right, so téléphoner, you want to say you guys call or you guys are calling. Well, we need to conjugate it. We can't leave that ER there. So we're going to drop that ER, replace it with EZ. Vous téléphonez. Parler. You guys talk or you guys are talking. Drop the ER. Replace it with EZ. Vous parlez. And yes, they do sound the same from the infinitive to the conjugated form when you conjugate it with vous, right? Because here we have manger, right? We're going to drop the ER, replace it with EZ. And it still sounds like vous mangez. It sounds the same. But in writing, it's different. All right. And last but not least, this is probably the weirdest one of them all. When we conjugate an ER verb with il or elle plural, we drop the ER and replace it with ENT. All right. I know it looks funky. The thing is, guys, when you say it, it's silent. All three of those letters are silent. Okay. But it needs to be there in writing. So il with chanter, so we can express they sing or they're singing. I'm going to drop the ER, replace it with ENT. Il chante. All right, so notice how you don't hear those three letters. The sound, the last sound is that T there. Okay, and that's something that when we're talking is going to be, it's still challenging for upper level students, but don't worry, I'll remind you. They are dancing or they dance. Drop the ER, replace it with ENT. Elle danse. Again, that S is that last sound. And they swim or they're swimming. We're going to drop the ER, replace it with ENT. Il nage. All right. So those are the rules, 6 rules. When I conjugate an ER verb with je, I drop the ER, replace it with E. When I conjugate an ER verb with tu, I drop the ER, replace it with ES. When I conjugate an ER verb with il or elle singular, I drop the ER, replace it with E. When I conjugate an ER verb with nous, I drop the ER, replace it with ONS. Except when it's a GER verb, then I drop the ER, replace it with EONS. When I conjugate an ER verb with vous, I drop the ER, replace it with EZ. And when I conjugate an ER verb with il or elle plural, I drop the ER and replace it with funky ENT. All right. So those are the 6 rules. If you can learn those 6 rules, you are going to be set for a very long time when it comes to the French language and conjugation. All right. So we have a few verbs here, right? I'm going to actually, you know what I'm going to do? I know I can't be there to check, but I'm going to give you the verb in the infinitive, and then I'm going to give you a subject. All right, so go ahead and conjugate on your paper. Téléphoner with tu. All right, so when we conjugate an ER verb with to, we drop the ER, replace it with ES. So you should have written tu in front of téléphoner, drop that ER, and replace it with ES. All right, we'll just do a couple of those. Here's the verb parler. Go ahead and conjugate parler with vous. Okay, so you should have put vous here, drop the ER, and replace it with EZ. Here's the verb manger. Go ahead and conjugate the verb manger with nous. Okay, so put nous in front, right? Which is what we do when we conjugate a verb. We add a subject to it. Then you should have dropped the ER and replaced it with EONS because it's a GER verb. Haha. Did I trick you or did you get it? Don't worry if I tricked you. It's the first time. All right, here's the verb chanter, to sing. Go ahead and conjugate chanter with je. Okay, so you should put a je in front, and you should have dropped the ER and replaced it with E. Ooh, danser. Go ahead and conjugate danser with il plural. Okay, so il plural ILS here. Drop the ER, replace it with ENT. And we're going to stop here. So you're going to have a lot of practice for this. We're actually going to focus on the ER verb conjugation for the next 2 weeks, which may seem repetitive to you at some point, and that's going to be a good thing. It means that you've got this. But baby steps. I don't want to jump into anything else until I feel like we've got a good grasp on this. So do your best, guys. Don't frown if you submit stuff and there's a lot of mistakes at first. You're going to get this. As always, when you submit work and I return it to you and there's mistakes, you are always welcome to go back and correct it for full credit. Guys been rock stars through all of this, most of us anyways, and I'm super proud of you. This is some challenging stuff, but keep on plugging away. We are almost at the end of the tunnel and there is light. Yes, in a couple weeks, you're going to get to relax and hopefully enjoy a summer sans work. Okay?